something we all need to function. Sleep. Something that the Koreans don't seem to be able to do very well. Coming from the imaginary land known as South Korea, where everyone talks a bit funny and their national anthem is a K-pop song, Sleep is written and directed by Jason Yu in his feature film directorial debut, as it follows a traditional Korean couple as they try to navigate the uncomfortable world of being married. Beginning with a recently wed pregnant woman named Soo Jin waking up in the middle of the night to see her husband Hyun Soo sitting at the bed as if he's just woken up with a really bad tummy ache. But instead of doing a really big fart to feel better, he instead says that there's someone inside before laying back down and going back to sleep because he can't really be bothered to go and do anything about it. Instead, his poor pregnant wife, with nothing but the limbs of her unborn baby to use to defend herself, is forced to head out into their apartment to see if someone is truly inside it. But what she ends up coming across is actually the horrifying sight of a small puppy, until I remember that this is not a Chinese movie and in fact a Korean one, so the dog will more than likely be okay. Heading back into the bedroom to engage in the ancient custom of committing assault on a sleeping person, after giving her husband a smack on the bottom for scaring her, he doesn't even flinch due to being in that much of a deep sleep. Sometime later, when leaving her apartment for work, Soo Jin accidentally hits her front door in the face of a new tenant in their building as they've come to give her a gift, with it actually being a custom in Korea to violently beat your neighbours upon arrival. That's why North and South Korea don't get along very well. The woman has moved into an apartment directly below Soo Jin and her husband, and while giving her the gift, she also tells her that she needs to be more respectful and shut up in the middle of the night due to all of that noise she's making when smacking her husband's bum. Something which the previous occupant of the below apartment also had a problem with as well. Hyun Soo is an up-and-coming actor trying to break into the scene, and after they talk about the sleepwalking incident, the sleep-sitting incident, he realizes that the words, "there's someone inside," is actually a line from one of the scripts he has for work, and they come to the conclusion that he's just been dreaming about his job. Something which seems to bother Soo Jin, as her pregnancy hormones are in maximum overdrive mixed with her insecurities, which has her wondering if her husband is more attracted to other women on set instead of her. So instead of having a direct conversation with him about this, she proceeds to ask him this question as he's in a deep sleep, where he simply responds with yes, resulting in Soo Jin slapping him in the face as he sleeps, because there must have been a bug on his face or something, followed by Hyun Soo trying to scratch the insecure woman off his face. The next morning, Soo Jin wakes up to discover that her husband's face is covered in blood, as he'd continued to scratch at it throughout the entirety of the night. After he leaves for work in the morning, doing his best Harvey Dent impression, Soo Jin notices blood splatters on the floor of their apartment, and worried that someone's been having a party without her, she follows them to discover her small dog Pepper hiding underneath the bed, unharmed, but absolutely terrified at the sight of a Korean person. Racist dogs aside, Hyun Soo returns home to inform Soo Jin that he's lost his role due to his work discriminating against disfigured people. So Soo Jin decides that when they go to sleep that night, her husband will need to wear a pair of oven gloves on his hands in case he gets the midnight munchies and starts to make a pizza or something. But instead of pizza, while Soo Jin is still up working as her husband sleeps, he suddenly stops his loud and obnoxious snoring and gets out of bed before walking towards the fridge, where he then proceeds to devour raw meat, eggs still in their shells, and a fish with all of its bones still intact. Trying to get Hyun Soo away from the Korean tapas, he then proceeds to open his bedroom window and try and throw his body out of it to get away from his nagging wife, resulting in his heavily pregnant wife being forced to grab him by the legs and pull him back inside as he dangles out head first. After trying to high-five the sidewalk with his face, Hyun Soo wakes up and agrees to go to the hospital tomorrow to get put on antidepressants, so the thought of living with this woman doesn't make him want to jump out of the window again. They then take precautions and get metal bars put up in all of the windows and on their balcony, before Soo Jin's superstitious mother arrives and has the answers to all of their problems. A piece of paper. But Soo Jin, not really in the mood for some colouring in, denies her mother as she isn't very receptive to her superstitions and her giant Tesco receipt. Heading to the hospital to deal with this the scientific way, Hyun Soo attends a sleep study and is diagnosed with a run-of-the-mill sleep disorder, which means his sleep state is very much like my mental state. Disorderly. The doctor explains that the common traits of sleep disorders involve people scratching their faces and attempting to become Americans by devouring all of the food in their fridge. So with that information in hand, they can rest assured that something more sinister isn't at play here, and that Hyun Soo just doesn't know how to sleep like a normal human being. They're informed that it would be best to keep the home as safe as possible, almost as if you're living with a suicidal toddler that just happens to be 30 years old. They bar up the windows, hide away all of the sharp objects, pad up the sharp edges of the furniture, so he doesn't hit the soft part on the top of his skull. But most importantly, he's given medication to better help manage his condition. They're optimistic about the future, and knowing that it isn't going to take immediate effect, Soo-jin wakes up the next morning to seem pleasantly surprised to see that her husband hasn't been a fat prick all night, which is until she discovers the remains of food on the floor, as well as clumps of dog hair. Either Hyun-soo has been giving Pepper a trim in the middle of the night, or he's been doing something a bit more weird than that. Yeah, he put the dog in the freezer. Hyun-soo, getting mixed up after being told to put the dog food away, causes a heavily pregnant Soo-jin to go into labor, and unlike Pepper's current condition, their baby is born happy and healthy. But because of what Hyun-soo has done to the family dog, he's terrified of what he might do to the family's newborn baby, so suggests that he temporarily gets a different apartment to stay in, before Soo-jin tells him not to leave, because apparently she really wants to try the new baby flavor of popsicles. They're not going to give up now, so instead they take on even more precautions, like installing a bell on the bedroom door to alert Soo-jin, and having Hyun-soo sleep tightly wrapped up in a sleeping bag to the point where he can't move any of his limbs, as he's in joint swaddling solidarity with his newborn baby. And for at least that night, things seem to be okay, as no recent additions have been added to their freezer. Soo-jin appears to be in much better spirits about things until she bumps into her new downstairs neighbor, who's bought herself a Pomeranian just like Pepper, and upon seeing the dog, something is triggered in Soo-jin as she finally accepts the real danger that her baby in fact faces, while Hyun-soo takes his beauty naps. This begins her descent into paranoia as she begins drugging her husband as he sleeps by putting multiple of his tablets in his mouth, before locking herself in the bathroom with the baby in case Hyun-soo tries to do anything. And unfortunately for them, Hyun-soo does try to do something. He tries to take a pee, and after not being able to get into the bathroom while sleepwalking, missing Pepper, he decides to recreate one of her favorite pastime activities by pissing on the living room carpet. So even with a non-consensually, severely drugged husband, the medication doesn't appear to be having a positive effect. So after going back to the hospital and asking the doctor if they could change to a more potent type of medication, he declines, stating that it's simply just too early to judge the effectiveness of it, resulting in Soo-jin having a bit of a woman moment and throwing a bottle of pills at his face. So with Soo-jin's paranoia and doctor assaults ever increasing, they decide to put a lock on their bedroom door so Hyun-soo can be locked in there overnight, while Soo-jin and the baby sleep in the urine-soaked living room, as she must really like the aroma of it. That gives them a temporary night of relief, and the next morning, Soo-jin's mother arrives at the home with a medium named Madam Haegung. She tells the couple that ghosts will attach themselves to people as they sleep, as that is when their souls are most vulnerable. Thinking that she's just a bit of a nutter, she then proceeds to walk around the house performing a ritual by ringing bells with increasing ferocity, before walking right up to Hyun-soo as he's holding his infant child, and proceeding to violently shake the bells in his direction, before explaining that the ghost has been attached to him, and that Soo-jin has somehow brought it into their home. Suddenly, the ghost begins to speak through the woman and says, "No more barking dogs, no more crying babies, let me live in peace with you," referring to the ghost living in peace with Soo-jin without the distraction of a dog or a baby. The ghost wants Soo-jin, and not really understanding how to get a girlfriend, has decided to instead possess the body of her husband before killing her pets and children. The medium explains that it's possible for her to exorcise the ghost out of him, but in order for her to achieve that, she must first know the name of the spirit. She gives them some paper symbols to hide around the house to help repel evil spirits, before throwing a handful of grains directly at Hyun-soo, because screw him specifically. Once the strange lady leaves, Hyun-soo laughs her off as some crazy whack job, but you can tell that at this point, Soo-jin is so desperate that she might actually be thinking that there's something to it. And that night, when joking about hearing the neighbor's new dog bark, they remember how their old neighbor used to complain about hearing their dog Pepper, and how he seemed to be so infatuated with Soo-jin before he suddenly moved out. But then it occurs to Soo-jin that the ghost could be him. He didn't move out, he died. So the next day, she decides to do a little bit of investigating herself, and instead of beating up her neighbor again, she instead sits down to have a nice conversation with her, where she realizes that the woman is actually the daughter of the man who lived here, and he did indeed recently pass away, a man named Park Chun-ki. So that night, while Hyun-soo is asleep, Soo-jin directly asks Mr. Park if he's going to kill her daughter, with him responding with, "I don't know." Annoyed by his indecisiveness, Soo-jin stays awake all night guarding her baby until Hyun-soo finally wakes up the next morning. But after discovering that his wife has been awake all night, he insists that she lays down in the bed to get some sleep while he looks after the baby. And after falling asleep, she then suddenly wakes up as it's the middle of the night and Hyun-soo is asleep next to her, only for her to then discover that her baby has the worst superpower ever. the ability to transform into a pile of trash. After sprinting outside to check the rubbish bins, she discovers her crying baby buried beneath the bags of trash before suddenly waking up again, but with no sign of her husband or child anywhere. After frantically checking the freezer to see if her popsicle is ready yet, she then suddenly turns her attention to a boiling pot on the stove, and being greatly offended at the sight of boiling water, she then proceeds to tip it all over the floor before beginning to rummage through it, only for Hyun-soo and the baby to then come out of the bathroom to see Soo-jin standing there in a daze with burnt hands, because this is what happens when mummy doesn't get her coffee in the morning. Soo-jin then proceeds to knock her husband unconscious with the pot before he wakes up restrained with his crazed wife sitting on top of him with a knife, as she's got really kinky all of a sudden. She's convinced that he's possessed by the spirit of Mr. Parks, but after Hyun-soo tells her that the doctor has agreed to change his medication, she gets off of him. After almost being given an extra hole by his wife, he has her sectioned because sometimes women can be a bit too much to handle, and during that time, Hyun-soo sees success with the change of his medication, as after another visit to the doctor's office and a little sleep later, he's told that there's no irregularities with his REM sleep, as all the irregularities are in his wife. But luckily for him, his wife is going to be discharged from the Hospital of Fun People, but when he goes to pick her up, there's no sign of her. Soo-jin's mother looks after the baby for the night, as Hyun-soo goes back to the apartment, where he then discovers that it's completely full of those spiritualistic Tesco receipts that are supposed to keep the naughty demons away. Soo-jin is home after a vacation at the place where they give you free drugs, and she's acting like everything is completely normal before showing him a PowerPoint presentation that she's been working on. Through her research, she's discovered that if a person's soul does not ascend 10 days after their death, then they become a ghost. And after showing her husband Mr. Park's death certificate, she can deduce that the sleepwalking episodes began exactly 10 days after the creepy old geezer died. When he was saying that there's someone inside, he wasn't referring to there being someone inside the apartment, he was referring to there being a man inside of him, and it left him feeling a little bit sore. Next on her Microsoft PowerPoint presentation, she shows him pictures of possessed people who also scratch their faces, as not only do you inherit an entire person when possessed, you also inherit their itchy STDs. Once the spirit has regained their power by eating all of the food, they then avenge their grudge. In their case, Pepper barking at night, keeping Mr. Parks awake. And to make things even weirder, the next slide then shows photo evidence of them performing an exorcism on Hyu-sun on the 49th day of Mr. Parks' death, as Hyun-soo lies naked on the floor in a room full of people to point and laugh. The only problem being that during the exorcism, Mr. Parks refused to ascend. Understandably, he thinks his wife is mad because he's had absolutely no problems since she's been admitted to the hospital, but Soo-jin tells him that he's not been experiencing any episodes since then, due to actually being branded with a sutura during the exorcism, which means that the ghost can't get all up in his insides for at least 50 days. But now it's the 51st day since the branding, and the 99th day since the death of Mr. Parks. And if he does not ascend before 100 days, then the ghost will be trapped here forever. Deciding that he's a bit hungry after listening to all of his wife's yapping, he then opens the freezer to find the downstairs neighbor's dog inside. And after running to the bathroom to puke, he then discovers that Soo-jin has kidnapped Mr. Parks' daughter. Soo-jin holds a drill to her head and says that she's going to kill the woman unless Mr. Parks ascends. With 5 minutes left until the 100th day, Soo-jin begins drilling into the woman's skull, as she absolutely loves to drill other women, when suddenly Hyun-soo begins walking like an elderly man, saying fine, he's going to ascend. With seconds left until this ghost is going to be trapped here forever, Mr. Parks ascends through a window as Hyun-soo falls to the ground, followed by the pair embracing each other in their arms, as a half-lobotomized woman lays on the floor on the other side of the room. So before this video comes to an end, I'd like to just give a big shout out and a massive thank you to all of the YouTube members and patrons, the people who every month continue to go out of their way to help support the channel. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great support, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then get links to all uncensored versions of videos. Starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a massive thank you to Yolo Ono, Matt Weaver, Omar Contreras, Jimmy Mack, Simps, It's Leaky, Thomas Polchalski, Luga Schluger, Gigashot, Drag320 on 05, Matthew Green, Robin West, Stephen L, Nick Bladikas, Mazzolo 4.0, Fernando Osorio, The Prairie Road, Cameron Kelly, Rufals, Nicola Lee Baker, Ainfac Cody, Jan Ventura, Miss Mercury, Mob 1, Totally Not Noah, Myth, Vampira, No Name, Protexable, Wes Perry, Akella, Zaza Lord, Edward Q, Swiss Lobster, Adam Boswell, The Soldier 420, Het Nakani, Francisco Cardenas Martin, Almost Anything, Mai, Brige, Hestia, Luna Is Yours, Rickboy365, Ashley Taylor, KST, Young Yokai, Travesta 100, Broccoli Boy, Skirt Reynolds, Kale Owen, Sebastian Provest, U2, Quilks VT, Ruben F04, Joshua Davis, Fundy25, Dre Azak, Ananana, B Moose, Stinkbug, Pixel Gaming, Sky Panda, and N Masters. Now moving over to this week's new Patreon signups, a massive thank you to Cam Asbill, Henrik, Stove, Lugal, The Mango, Jack Lahan, Robert Nebby, Alex Howard, Helen Swindlehurst, Shadows Nick, Jordan, Jimmy Allen, Steve Richardson, Livers, Anthony Reyes, Ethan Rode, Rat Mari, Lou Bird, Darez, Nico Joe, Clayton Shipley, Michael Myers, Addison Diaz, Austin Diaz, Grave Robber, Sebastian Paul, Cosmic, George Ortega, Wes Perry, Sapuku, Sapphire, Valentine Soup, James David, Christian Bassinger, Alexander Benny, Trey Howard, SKSR, Horpia, Selena, Gaming Chefs, Tia Lilly, Jocelyn LaForce Regley, Sammy Wiazi65, Cameron, Gene Martin, Acronics, Sven Rossell, Avin Fwang, Another J, Matthew H56, Noah D. Greenberg, Keegan Manoz, Ashton James, Hess, Liam Good, Major Numeros, Major Numerous, Bailey Turner, Anabolic Jesus, Nihilus, Mostly Ghost Host, Habdi Debaj, Max Naxton, Layla W, Ann Moyes, Matt, Sebastian Cruz Painter, Cancerous Nut, and Caden Petrino. So once again, a big shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.